Joining us now is Alistair Wilcox, an African Affairs analyst, to discuss more on this. Emmerson Mnangagwa has been sworn in as the new president. Who is he in Zimbabwe polity?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Emmerson Mnangagwa is not strange to Zimbabwean politics. As a matter of fact, he's a beneficiary of the bad politics played by Robert Mugabe. He's been Robert Mugabe's right-hand man and one of the most dreaded personality in Zimbabwe politics. It was said he was part of those that did a lot of crackdown in the Matabele land area of Zimbabwe and some of the atrocities committed by the Mugabe administration. But fortunately, luck ran into him and he fell out with Mugabe just a few months, about 7 months ago, and that signaled the end of Mugabe's tenure. So he's been a part of the old guard, having benefited immensely from Robert Mugabe's dictatorial and perpetration of in-office rule for all the 37 years he was in power. So he's not a strange face in Zimbabwe politics. If he has been able to be a reformist, removing the toga of the negative aspect of Robert Mugabe's administration, that is left to be seen by many.
Okay, so Mnangagwa had been in government more than 6 months before the election. How do you rate his performance before his swearing in?
Well, I think it's neither here nor there because 6 months really is too small to have assessed the impact of Mnangagwa. The important thing being the fact that the entire Zimbabwe populace, a large section of the Zimbabwe populace was already fed up with Robert Mugabe. And for there to be that popular revolt against Mugabe means they just wanted anything but Mugabe. So Mnangagwa was able to, Emmerson was able to fit into that bill at that particular point in time. Now, Zimbabwe has been plagued with a lot of issues, mainly economic issues. So also is political issues. And what they are now looking at for is how they can stabilize the economy first and foremost. Now, the election came rather too soon. So a lot of people were not comfortable that the election came rather too soon after the exit of Mugabe. 6 months really was quite small for a meaningful campaign for the opposition, because already Mugabe, even with Emmerson, held Zimbabwe down in the jugular politically. So that 6 months period is not enough to have assessed Emmerson. But the important thing is that Zimbabweans were tired of Mugabe and they want anything but Mugabe.
Okay, so do you think he could reconcile with the opposition for an inclusive government?
That is left to be seen, as a matter of fact. If you look at the differences in the vote, 50.4%, barely 50% threshold for him to have won the election. Because if he hadn't scored that 50% threshold, there would have been a rerun. But because he was able to score that 50%, just barely going above the 50%, then he was able to have been declared winner. And that is where the oppositions are all picking holes as to what happens during the election. So it's left to be seen. The Zimbabwe populace is deeply divided along those lines, along the political lines, deeply divided. As a matter of fact, deeply divided. And so it will take an uphill task because the 49.6% that never voted for him in the election is a strong force. So yes, agreeably, he has majority of the assembly. He has over 2/3 majority of the assembly. But again, the day-to-day persons on the street of Zimbabwe is a lot of persons that it has to be an uphill task because let's face it, he's part of the old guard. And if for anything, they have eased off Zimbabwe. And if you take human beings for what they are, at every point in time, you want something new. So he has a lot of work cut out for him, and he needs to work faster and be able to unite.
Alistair Wilcox, African Affairs analyst, thank you so much for joining us on the program to help us understand more on that.
It's my utmost pleasure. Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you. Meanwhile, the ruling party ZANU-PF says former President Robert Mugabe is not feeling well. In a tweet, the party wished him speedy recovery, saying that President Mnangagwa will ensure he gets the best medical care he deserves. This comes after the president was sworn in as Zimbabwe's second elected president at a huge rally over the weekend. Mr. Mugabe and his wife Grace were not at the ceremony. The former president has caused a stir before the July 30 polls by backing opposition candidate Nelson Chamisa in the heavily disputed election. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump today in Washington before going into an expanded bilateral meeting in the cabinet room with their delegations. Strengthening security cooperation will be on the agenda when the two leaders meet in the Oval Office. The country wants to secure financing for a new $4.5 billion highway from the port city of Mombasa to the capital, Nairobi. Kenya is seen as a partner to the United States in the fight against terror in the East and Horn of Africa, and both countries have troops in Somalia. The U.S. is the largest source of tourists to Kenya, and the country hopes direct flights from Nairobi to New York from October will boost arrivals. President Kenyatta will also meet with UK Prime Minister Theresa May on Thursday in Nairobi. Joining us now is an international affairs analyst, Calvin Dirk. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
While we know a number of issues will be discussed by both leaders, will the last presidential elections in the country come up?
They should, but they won't, for several reasons. One is Donald Trump has shown that when it comes to promoting democracy, elections transparency, that's not a priority for him in this country or abroad. And also some of the recent events with family separation and the investigation of Russia collusion really take away from his credibility, even if he wanted to speak on it.
Let's talk about the duration of this meeting, just 20 minutes. Does that speak about the sort of relationships that exist between the two?
I don't believe so, because with this administration, unlike previous ones, it's hard to kind of read the tea leaves of what these times may mean. It could just be because, President Trump is juggling a lot of things, most controversies of his own making, and I don't really think he needs the time to do the substantive meetings that other presidents would have had. Because to be honest, this is going to come down to if he feels chemistry with President Kenyatta and if President Kenyatta compliments him on how he believes he's made America great again. So I don't believe the time gives an indication one way or the other.
Peace and security are some of the issues to be discussed by the two leaders. How has the U.S. assisted in securing peace and reduction of the influence of Al-Shabaab in East Africa?
Well, I think that after economic ties, security cooperation is going to be high on President Trump's agenda. And I do think that inasmuch as President Trump can increase security cooperation to reach his goals and improve his image as, making America tougher and stronger, he will. However, I think that the lack of a really coherent strategy for security and economics in Africa is going to handicap whatever the two leaders discuss or whatever could come out of the meeting as far as security is concerned.
Thank you, Calvin Dirk, of International Affairs Analyst. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Still to come on the program, several people displaced in Ethiopia following ethnic clashes. Please stay with us.